Three, two, one, here we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian the Rain Man Lucas. Welcome to RAINMAN'S Take, observations on the world we live in. We're going to take a deeper dive into topics of interest to me, including politics, current events, history, popular culture, and social issues. You'll find the diversity of topics refreshing. In our clickbait, soundbite society, we rarely get the whole story. RAINMAN'S Take interviews interesting people as well as peeling back the onion on specific topics, all with the goal of getting people to think more deeply about a subject. Hey everybody, it's the Rain Man. Want to welcome back my guest, Kevin Russell. Kevin, how you doing?
Great, Brian. Good to see you again.
All right, my man. So Kevin was my guest 2 episodes ago. He is the author of Radical Enlightenment, My Guy on the Ninth Floor. He is also a practitioner in energy balancing and energy healing, and we're going to get into all of that today. So Kevin, welcome back. And for everybody who listened to the podcast a couple of weeks ago, we kind of got into what made Kevin write the book initially, and then kind of talking, we started to get into the book and then we had to cut it short. So we're going to finish it off today. So we'll talk a lot about the contents of the book, as well as what Kevin does in terms of when he sees clients in terms of energy balancing and that sort of thing. So probably the best place to start, because it seems like it is foundational in the concept that everything is energy and everything seems to be connected. But let's start by jumping way into the upper level physics here. Quantum field theory.
Yeah.
Explain that and how that impacts us.
Yeah. So the quantum field is, we started out in the 1800s with theories of there's something more than what we can observe. We moved into being able to test these in the early 1900s and then through the middle part of last century, and then accelerating into this century with the CERN Hadron Collider and all the rest of the work that's being done around really figuring out what this field, this place, this space is, that's so infinitesimal that it's really barely visible, even with the strongest microscopes, and breaking atoms and shattering electrons. But we haven't necessarily looked at it as something we're also part of. And that's where the connections were made for me with really incorporating concepts around unified field theory, quantum entanglement, zero-point energy into our existence and into our lives. So with quantum field theory, everything is connected. Everything is energy at the base level of existence in this dimension that we all experience. And we look outside and we see trees and blue sky. We feel the air. We drive cars. These are tactile things, but at their core, everything I just mentioned is also energetic, and so are we. So if everything is connected and if everything is energy, then what does that matter to us? Well, we literally mean everything. Our thoughts, our words, our reactions, the negative thoughts we might have about ourselves or others, all of these things are energetic, and all of these things connect to everything else because of quantum entanglement. So if we have a negative thought about ourselves, that thought can transform, because energy can't be created or destroyed, it can only change form. That negative thought can transform into depression or anxiety or shoulder pain or angina or sciatica or any kind of chronic ailment that there isn't a specific source root cause of that's been identified, but that we take medication for. All of these things have energetic components. Not only does our energy, which comes in the form of, if we physically work out, we feel the energy. We're sweating, we feel the muscles, we feel the energetic capacity of the human body. The challenge is we aren't as aware of the subtler energies around thoughts, feelings, reactions, around the things that we feel like are only happening on the inside and internally. Because again, everything's connected. So that what we feel internally, we emanate out into our world. What we experience in our inner space, we create in the outer reality that we experience. I'm using finger quotes for reality because it's completely subjective.
Yeah.
Every single one of us is experiencing our world through their own specific lens, their own specific first-person video game player perspective of what we all agree is our world. So when we get to looking at things like I can't remember Schrodinger's I can't remember the postulate. I think Schrodinger's theory is basically there's so much randomness within, so apparent randomness within the quantum field, that we can't even predict what an atom or molecule is going to do because of the observer effect. And so observation affects reality, basically. The challenge is we aren't observing our reality, we're enmeshed with it. We feel like we are this world. We feel like we identify with our beliefs and with our home team or our college team, or I'm a man or I'm a woman. All of these things are external beliefs that we then internalize and associate and identify ourselves with those things. The challenge is those are very surface and if we pull back far enough, very, very minuscule. Yeah. Our similarities outweigh our differences tenfold. And similarities being, we are all those energetic beings. We are all those energetic expressions having a human experience. And so when we talk about applying quantum field theory and quantum mechanics to life, it really comes out in the form of what kind of space am I cultivating? What kind of playground am I creating inside? Is it broken down and rusted and it hasn't been used for forever? And because we're not having critical thought, we're not questioning, why am I feeling that way? Why am I thinking this way? Why is one side doing something and the other side's doing something else? Why has this seemingly been perpetual for the last 5,000 to 8,000 years, as far as haves and have-nots and slavery and different social constructs and disparity based on gender or appearance? All of these things are completely superficial. So it really comes down to the space we're cultivating internally is the reality that we're going to experience externally. And so if we're in a place of fear and anxiousness and scarcity or judgment of ourselves or of others, we're literally creating those things outside of ourselves because of quantum entanglement and because everything is connected. And so, yeah,
let me stop you right there, because this is what I find actually fascinating is take us and then take like a lion in the savannah. Mm-hmm. We're both carbon life forms, but they're and you know, you kind of just touched on a little bit about how man, you know, these levels and these layers of control, slavery, government, all these sorts of things, where in nature they don't have that. It's black and white. And they have the ability, or at least some of the books I read, they have the ability, if something were to affect them, to instantaneously, by nature, just instantaneously dissipate that massive shot of energy that came into their body as a result of whatever it is, chasing after his next meal, whatever, you know, being attacked by another lion, whatever it is.
The hyenas, yeah.
And so are you saying that all those layers that have been put upon us because we live in the three-dimensional human world, those are stopping us from being able to do that natural process of ridding that energy?
Yeah.
Or maybe straightening out energy is the wrong word, but just you know, getting it back into a normal state.
Getting back to balance and stasis more readily, 100%. And this is the interesting thing. To a large degree, we have extracted ourselves from our natural state, from our natural way of being. But in that process, we've created new dangers. We've created, because our systems are hardwired to avoid danger, right, and implement safety. And we've done that individually within ourselves, with where we put up emotional barriers, or we put up defense mechanisms based on how we were raised or based on the environment that we experienced growing up and in life. And then collectively, societally as well, with borders, with armies, with weapons, you know, macro and micro. I've got my gun so I can defend myself, and we've got an army so we can defend ourselves. And some of these, well, all of these threats are perceived. None of them are are actual, because we're all playing this game. We're all playing this external game of thinking that we are the outer world. We are, you know, I am this, or I believe this. And these are actually just false identifications, false identifiers that keep us further away from our natural state, further away from our inner selves, which is, in my experience, a state of pure love, pure acceptance, pure empathy, and just away, just being, just sloughing everything else off and just being, and going beyond the I am to just.
Well, and that's and that kind of getting back to the lion analogy.
Yeah.
You know, the human form of that, at least in my view, is I own a gun. I am part of an army. We are fighting against another human, much like a lion would be doing. But is it at the base level, at the same energy level? Isn't that the same, or is it different?
It's different in that, I think, to your point, you know, if a gazelle is being pursued, or if a lion is in danger, as soon as it's over, they don't hold grudges against the cheetah that was chasing them, or the pack of hyenas that were you know, coming after the lion's kill, let's say, because there is just now for a majority of animals. There's actually a fascinating, I think it's a Labradoodle, who has this touchpad and is actually communicating with her owner. And you know, like the hello button or the easy button.
Yeah.
It's got those, everything's different programmed. And so it's got self-identifications like I or you. It's got desires. So she is actually communicating and has shown understanding of space-time, has understanding of the future and the past based on her responses. And so I think there's a lot that we don't still know about the animal world, but perceptively, the big difference between animals and us is the ability to just let it go, really. The challenge is our systems, and I'm curious about this from the animal kingdom standpoint. Our systems are, I think all of our systems are hardwired for safety from a biological standpoint. The challenges of the modern world are such that, one, we've been on an evolutionary ramp of elevating our consciousness collectively and individually over the last, I'm going to say 12,000 years. We've been practicing and putting in place structures and organizational methods, namely capitalism, for the last, I don't know how many years. So I guess since the Knights Templar decided to create credit. So let's go at least 1,500 years. Let's go 1,800 years, something like that. So we have refined this practice of capitalism to its nth degree, to the point where it's largely exclusive of any natural human state. And we're self-identifying again with money. We're self-identifying with power. We're self-identifying with things that really have no bearing on the natural world. These are all things we've created. Right. One, to make sense of our world. Two, for protection. And three, to really get those more base needs met of safety, security, and perceptions of those. Because in the reality is, I mean, an asteroid could strike the Earth tomorrow. Volcanoes could all go nuts. We're in a dynamic living world. And so safety and security are largely misnomers. Yeah. Any number of things could happen at any time. But we get so caught up in the what ifs, or the I wish it hads from if we're looking at in the past, that we not only do we pull the future to us with these energetic musings, with these, oh, well, if this happens, then this is going to happen. And then also we haul the past back to us because we've got regrets and we've got depression. And so we're never really allowed to live in the moment. We don't allow ourselves to live in the moment, much like a lion or a gazelle does. Yeah. And so that's why it's not even turning it off. It's just, okay, that's over. Now I'm doing this.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty wild to think about that. And we'll probably go into this next, I'm sure, because it's part of your book. But, before the Roman Catholic Church took over and Christianity started 2,000 years ago, most most people worshipped outside. They worshipped the stars,
Mm-hmm.
astronomy, nature. The Druids in Ireland.
The
Everything
Pictish,
was
exactly.
everything was connected to the earth, and one of the major digs against the church is that they've completely separated
Well,
humans from the natural world.
and it's so funny because part of that consolidation of energy and power, let's call it, was because they adopted and co-opted traditional and more organic and biological methods that be human, more cyclical. So the winter solstice, which is basically Christmas, and the spring equinox, which is basically Easter,
Mm-hmm.
with the egg, which is a very, very natural element, natural symbol, and trees, being trees inside, very, very natural. But it was by necessity. And this is actually, I can't remember if it was Justinian. I can't remember the emperor's name, but it was either his wife, the queen, or his mom, the queen, or not queen, empress, I guess, who said, listen, if you don't like bring people in, this whole thing's going to fall apart. Like Christianity, it's not going to work because there's too many other disparate beliefs. So even religion, there's nothing is created in a vacuum. Nothing exists outside of anything else, and everything in our three-dimensional world is completely subjective. And so, with religions, there is universality across the board in all major world religions, as far as guiding on how to live an honorable life, guiding on how to be as an individual and with other people. Don't covet your neighbor's wife. Treat others how you want to be treated. These are universals. They're not just in the Bible. The challenge is us. The challenge is humans got their hands on the word, which is universal and eternal, in my opinion. And we started applying very subjective human aspects to them. So where there was the word of peace and love and understanding, it's been adulterated in a way to include concepts of guilt and shame and fear of the other, because we're right. And if we're right, somebody else has to be wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a zero-sum game, black and white perspective of our subjective reality that just doesn't really hold water, because nothing is the only absolute, I feel, is love. And outside of that, everything is subjective.
Yeah. And it's funny, the Catholic Church, basically, the Inquisition found with Galileo. They basically they found him guilty of heresy because he's looking through a telescope at the natural world, and the church is saying, no, it's not, that's incorrect. Right. It just blows my mind. And then now you hear about the Catholic Church is one of the most powerful, largest telescopes on earth.
Yeah.
So it's
it's
that do as I say, not as I do type of a thing, huh?
Absolutely. And I think that was like 600 years ago, give or take. So, and again, like we view our lives as these massive, just earth moving things. And in some regards they are, because they're our lives, that we are the prime player in our movie, and everybody else is either, co-stars or bit players.
Right.
But we are also co-stars in other people's movies and bit players in still other people's movies. And we're not even in the credits in the majority of the world's movies. But we have this hyperinflated view of ourselves that really has put us out of sync with nature and with our true state for forever. I mean, it's the earth is flat, and then it's like, oh, well, actually, no, we can actually mathematically prove that the earth is round. Well, we are on earth, therefore earth is the most important celestial body in the sky, so the sun must revolve around that. Well, no, there's always a bigger fish in the sea. There's, and even the sun, our sun is a tiny, tiny, tiny star compared to some massive, stars that have been identified and discovered. So everything's subjective to something else. Everything's relative. Yeah. And there's always going to be a bigger fish. Yeah. And having that perspective, I think, opens us up to to uncertainty, which I think is a very healthy thing. The more uncertain we are and the more questions we have about the nature of our experiences and our existence, the nature of the systems we've created, I think that's one of the best ways to begin a self-awareness journey or self-awareness practice.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just really increasing our inner knowing and honing our intuition. And I think we touched last time how we come off the shelf as a human, pre-baked with intuition, heightened empathy, clairvoyance, clairescence, clairaudience, all the clairs, with precognition. There's an amazing study that they did where researchers they had hooked up participants to a program that had randomized images placed in them, or images placed in them, and the computer randomized what image it showed to the participant. So the researchers knew there were two groups of images. One was very pleasant. So it's like babies and puppies and balloons and sunshine. Right. And the other were very troubling images, war, famine, violence. So they programmed the images into the computer, and then the computer selected the image at random. What they saw was there was actually a change in the frequency and the rhythm of the participant's heart before the image was even selected by the computer, if it was going to be a troubling or challenging image to view.
Wow.
There's a biological response to an image that hadn't even been selected yet. And then the response was validated when the image was selected. And so the response was getting ready for something bad, and then something bad was selected. And so I actually just thought of this, is that, okay, are we naturally precognitive, or are we so strong that we actually helped to select that image from the system based on the reaction?
Yeah.
And so now we're going back to quantum and the double slit experiment, where a single particle can appear in two different places. Every atom that is in contact with every other atom has information transfer. So a light particle on its way to Earth touches every single atom in space on its way. And if particles are once in contact and then separated, their orientation and magnetism remains constant no matter how far in distance they're separated. And so this is where we get into things like when you think about someone that you haven't seen in a while, and then you reconnect.
Yeah.
That's literally making a quantum Wi-Fi phone call.
And dude, that's happened several times this year, and I'm actually, it blows my mind. It's like, dude, I was just thinking about you. Either they call, or you run into them, or you see a newspaper article about them.
There you go. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's literally when we do that, we're literally reaching out with our energetic tendrils, and we're reconfirming and re-strengthening those connections that have always been there. And we've all got them. We're all connected to everyone else on this planet. But we've chosen, almost by proxy, not even by conscious choice, to play this game of separation, to experience all the contrast in the world. But the challenge is, instead of experiencing the contrast and letting it go, going back to the lion analogy, where it's like, I'm chasing down a water buffalo or a zebra for dinner. Like, go. That's crazy contrast. All right, I got my kill. I'm having my dinner. Oh crap, now there's a pack of hyenas coming in. That's a whole different expression of contrast.
Yeah.
And then after it's done, the lion's back to just being a lion. The challenge is, we're so resistant to some contrast in our world, either a different way of thinking or a different belief system or something that someone has that we might not agree with, that we embed those things within us and start to emanate those negative or less than love, less than the pure energy aspects of our existence back out into the world. And then they morph and change as well.
Yeah. So let me ask you, and obviously what you do as a energy practitioner is you help people get rid of that energy or back to even it out, back to a normal state. And how does that, how can you do that? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And is there a way that, and when you have clients, you teach them how to, okay, after something just happened, how to be able to try to release that energy. And then the next question on top of that is, when their energy is disrupted, you call it dis-ease.
Yeah.
And that can actually have, like I said, it can actually make you sick. How does all that work? So start with the first one. How you help somebody who's got that blockage.
Yeah. So this has come after about 5 years of practice on myself. And the two big subconscious and or energy modalities that my wife Kelly and I have been using for that period. One of them is called the emotion code, and the other one is called Psyche. And Psyche is basically stands for psychological kinesiology. And so along the way, Kelly's an amazing practitioner in her own right, and very intuitive, and really just a powerful presence and a holder of space that she then uses using these modalities with her clients. What I've done is kind of taken all the totality of everything that I've experienced in these modalities that I've been using, and I've transformed them into something else, because I actually at least for right now, part of my process in working with individuals is I use my body as almost a barometer for where they're at energetically. So it's called either working by surrogation or by proxy. And so we can actually connect energetically, basically like energetic Wi-Fi, to others' energetic supercomputers, others' energetic systems, and get information from our system. So I'm going to take a quick detour and jump into conscious versus subconscious mind.
Absolutely.
All of this work takes place in the subconscious. So in the book, I've really bisected or consolidated, I guess would be a better term, our physical experience and our mental and spiritual experiences, and delineated into three things. One, the subconscious mind body. Two, the conscious mind, which is where we have the critical thought, we have interpersonal communication. It's where a lot of creative thinking takes place. And then our energetic self, our energetic core. That's kind of the driver. That's the eternal us, the inner light, if you will.
Right.
And so the subconscious mind body is our entire physical body, our autonomic nervous system, our fight, flight, or freeze, our lizard brain or our limbic system, everything that is not our critical, frontal lobe, our prefrontal cortex. Everything else is subconscious mind body. And so if we're thinking about it from a processing standpoint, our conscious mind, I for one, I'm task oriented, and I do very well doing one thing at a time. Some people can multitask to varying degrees of success. But from a capacity standpoint, our conscious mind, and they've actually done studies on this, where they've seen and they've assessed that the processing capacity of the conscious mind is around 40 bits per second. And these are actually, these groups of numbers are actually a little bit old. These numbers have shifted, and the disparity's gotten even greater. Now, the subconscious mind operates at closer to 20 million bits per second. So if our subconscious mind wasn't working, we would be non-functional in the world. We could not take all of the input from sound and color and light that the world has and still function. We could not drive cars without our subconscious mind to kind of put a governor on what we experience consciously. So not only that, and it's the repository for every single experience we've ever had in our entire lives. And it's also quantum. And this is where the challenge comes in. So we experience space-time with our conscious mind in a linear progression.
Right.
Our subconscious mind body can record something or remember something from when we were 5. And this is where we kind of get into PTSD as well.
Yeah.
And if something similar happens that is assessed by our subconscious mind body as dangerous, and the closest thing it has is this program that it wrote when we were 5, when our parents were fighting, or when we were maybe in an abusive or a neglectful household, and for whatever reason, our subconscious is seeing a parallel, it's going to serve up the program that was written in the experience from our past to us in the present moment. And that's why it's such a disconnect with anxiety and depression and PTSD, where it just comes out of the blue and it hits us. Our subconscious is so powerful, but it's really, really, really awful at situational awareness. And so that's where the challenges come in. So all of, anything that is written can anything negative that's written can, and I like to use the analogy of like an energy knot. Like if we look at our energy as a piece of string, any negative experience we have has the potential to be a knot in that string. So our energy gets gummed up, our flow, our capacity for processing energy diminishes. And then we're kind of left out on this limb of any number of expressions of dis-ease that we have, of, oh, I can't move forward in life, or depression, anxiety are two very, very, very prevalent ones.
Yeah.
Or I have these negative self-doubt or negative self-talk. All of these things are a system trying to keep us safe, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And they get knotted up. So what I do when I connect with a client is I read their system, and I'm not doing anything that their system isn't telling me. I'm not, and that's why I never use the term healing. I'm more, I help shift or change energy, or we can rewrite the negative programs, eliminate the negative subconscious programs, write positive ones, instill positive ones in our system. And so in this regard, our system is really like a supercomputer. And so the method that I use is it's basically just like opening up a terminal on a computer and assessing what's going on with the supercomputer, where the malware is, where the misfiring programs are, where the outdated software is, and really just fixing it from an energetic standpoint. If you want, we could just drop into something real quick and test this thing out.
Let's do it.
All right.
I'm open for it.
All right. So like I said, I work pretty much with surrogation. And so we can actually connect, even though we're in different places, energetic Wi-Fi, as long as it's safe and appropriate for both of our systems to do. So the way I do this is, and the way we work with clients is with muscle testing. This is where psychological kinesiology, the muscle testing component, comes in. So again, subconscious, super powerful, really, really basic at the same time, and they're very bad at situational awareness. So it brings everything that might happen or has happened right up to us now. So I'm just going to real quick check self-muscle test, make sure it's safe and appropriate. I'll surrogate for you. And if there is an inquiry that you have a question about, or something that has been kind of on your mind, or that you feel like might be good to shift, then we can check that out. So let me just see real quick. So I'm just so I'll do this out loud. So I just say, so it's safe and appropriate for me to surrogate for Brian Lukasik, and I get a strong response. So that's a positive. It's safe and appropriate for Brian Lukasik to have me surrogate for him. I got another strong. So that's the confirmation that this is safe and appropriate to do. So now here's the trippy part. So this is how I self-muscle test. And we've got a whole handbook on the site about 6 different methods of self-muscle testing. So what I do is I push down with my middle finger on my pointer finger.
Okay.
And so watch this. My name is Brian Lukasik. I'm pushing down as hard as I can. My name is Kevin Russell. So that's a weak response when it drops down. If you want to try this out for yourselves, the most available method for a lot of people is a sway test. And you can just do this with your name. So if we're standing up, chin parallel, eyes down at about 45 degrees, which is it's a neutral stasis body position and brain position. And then we just say out loud, my name is, and then state your name. And it helps to get centered, and it helps to have a quiet space to do this. You don't necessarily want to do this in a room full of screaming kids or right off the bat in the grocery store.
Right.
But if you're muscle testing accurately, you'll actually sway forward for a strong response, and then kind of sway a little bit backwards for a negative response. So we're in surrogation right now. So let me just, Brian. All right. So we can check your immune system. If you got anything you've been curious about, or anything that's been gnawing on your mind, we can touch on that. We don't have to get too deep, but we could keep it light.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that we're doing this, because I've actually had a couple of sessions with another counselor, not necessarily practitioner of energy, but it's wild when you hit upon something, the release is unbelievable. It's like a weight's lifted off of your shoulders.
Yeah, and the expression is different for everyone. Sometimes it feels like a lightning, Sometimes I've had people where it's all of a sudden like they've got a lot of intestinal movement. It's like there's a lot, the kind of energy shifts.
Yeah.
I was working with a woman just this week, and her visualization was almost like an orange rectangle, and she was feeling that it was marred or colored, like just it had maybe like greasy streaks on it.
Right.
And then by the end of the session, she's like, it's just like, I just feel like it's just this like bright light, and there's no more of the dark lines. And I'm like, yeah, that's because we took care of them, we cleared them all out.
I tell you what, dude,
yeah.
I'm just getting started doing this whole podcasting thing.
Yeah.
We'll do it offline because you caught me off. You caught me off.
No worries. I like it. I appreciate it.
So we'll definitely do that some other time. And when I get better at this and more comfortable,
no worries.
Doing this again.
I didn't mean to drop a bomb on you.
that's totally fine, brother.
But yeah, let me jump back out real quick, and then we'll
okay. Yeah.
Continue on the path. Here we go. All right, we're good.
I love it.
So I just released irrigation, so I'm back to being me. Okay. You're back to being you. We're all good.
So let me ask you this. So when somebody is, wishing for something, wishing hard, is that's going out there, and then when it actually happens, or when something happens that's positive in that direction, it's shocking to people, but that's just the whole concept of everything is something's listening to whether it's positive or negative, and it's bouncing it back at you.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And so this is where we get into a little bit of the laws of attraction, and then the book, The Secret.
Yep.
So there's a lot of accuracy in those, but it also stops short, because just positive thinking, or just positive affirmations, or just kind of, launching these desires, or stating I want, or I'm going to, or I already have, if we're doing it from a capacity of informing our system, like I am instead of I want, those are great. But if we actively have things in our subconscious that for whatever reason are counter or opposite of that thing, it's going to be nearly impossible with just desire or just positive thinking to get to those places. Because a lot of times it's like there's a train with two engines, and we have all of these desires going in a positive forward direction. But if we haven't dealt with our stuff, then we'll achieve varying degrees of success. I mean, there are billionaires out there who've got all the money in the world, but do they have healthy relationships with themselves? Do they have healthy relationships with their employees, with their families, with their children, with their spouses or partners? And so we're really talking about it from a holistic capacity or holistic approach. It's not just money. Money is not going to make anybody happy. They've actually done studies that I think when I saw it, I think it was over 145,000. The happiness quotient plateaus. You don't get any happier after you hit a certain threshold. Okay, so if money's not doing it, well, what about status? If I'm loved or beloved, then that'll make me happy. Yeah. But again, we're looking for things outside of ourselves. We're looking for affirmation or for validation from something outside of us, because there's a perceived deficit inside. That perceived deficit is where all these energetic subconscious knots come in. So a lot of times, if we're on a self-awareness or self-help or self-inquiry journey, we start with identification of things outside of ourselves. We start with our zodiac sign, let's say, or we learn our love language, or we learn personality types. There's a lot of different personality types. The challenge is that a lot of these actually identify with our dis-ease. So if we're learning our love language and we haven't done the internal work to be joyous and peaceful with ourselves in the here and now, regardless of if we have status or don't, if we have money or don't, just being 100% centered within ourselves. Right. We have the tendency to stop with those external identifications, and I am this, or I've got I'm a yoga teacher, or I am a businessman, or I am a pilot, or I am a Sagittarius, or whatever it is. Those are all ways that we help. Those are all ways that we identify and make and help to understand ourselves and our world and our place in it. But if we stop there, we're kind of selling ourselves a little short, because there's so much more. We just have to clean out all that energy,
Yeah.
clean out all that dis-ease to really be able to tap into it.
So is it possible then to clean out all of that dis-ease and still positively identify it as all those things? So that such that they're not a crutch anymore, but they're just more like, hey, this is kind of part of my suit that I wear every day.
Yeah, in my experience, it actually gets to a place of post-identification. So, yeah, I mean, in this.
By the way, this is probably where a lot of people will like. I consider myself pretty open, and I'm very interested to hear what you got to say, because when I hear stuff like this, all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm kind of answering my own question here, but I kind of say to myself, well, then who am I after this happens?
Yes.
You know,
And
that freaks people out.
Yeah, and it is, and it really is. It's a process and a journey of. It's a reductive exercise.
Yeah,
We're shedding. We're peeling back the layers of the onion. We're taking our conditioning and our programming out of the equation. And a lot of that is, I mean, there's some of us who are professional patients, because there's always something going on. There's always some type of an ailment, but that's an identification. And the more we identify with that, the more of that we're going to create. So who am I after that is a big juncture in the journey.
yeah, absolutely.
So if I am not those things, what am I? And then we get to the place of I am. Just being. I am.
Yeah.
So we start off with I am something. I am Kevin. I am Brian. I am a man. I am an American. I am a graduate of whatever school. I am a whatever. Those are things that we do, but those are not us. So I am a father. I am a son. I am a husband. Those are roles that I've chosen to experience, but none of those labels or roles define me as a being. My actions and my words and my thoughts and the way I show up for myself and for everyone else, that is the I am. And so once we move past identifying with things, that gets us to a point of freedom, really. Right. To the place of I am is enough. And so for so many, I am isn't enough, because there's these perceived deficits, which are actually just those layers of conditioning and programming and dis-ease internally that we're misidentifying with.
Yeah.
We're thinking I am the son or the child of a narcissist, or I am I come from a single parent household, and that's my identification. Or right. I was raised by my grandparents because my parents weren't available, and then that becomes part of our identification. So it's moving away from identifying with things that happen to us or things that we experience, and moving towards that inner space. And it can be terrifying for some people. And not everybody's going to be willing, able, or wanting to be on that journey or on that path. And that's perfectly fine, because we're all at different places on the field.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I keep thinking, and this is just me personally, I'm getting better at this, but the idea of, okay, once I've gotten to what you're saying, where you look at yourself as just, I am, mm-hmm. Can you still operate within the three-dimensional world that we've created? That's in my view of these sorts of philosophies and practices. And this is one of the reasons why I love Stoicism, mm-hmm. is they talk about it as philosophy within the chaos of the world. You're not separating yourself from the chaos. You're just learning how to deal with it, in a certain way. So is that kind of what happens? You get to a certain level of I am, and now I can go and get back in and jump back into the real world and operate hopefully at a higher level, or is that?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's a process and a practice that on my personal journey, I never separated from anything. I was working full time, the 9 to 5, let's say, in my design career. And it was the typical, like, up in the morning, gone all day, home at night. But along the way, I was I was entertaining thoughts in the spaces between. Instead of just jumping into listening to other people say things on my drives home, I was just having the radio off and just being with myself. And I think that's one of the it's another good first place to start, is being just comfortable being with ourselves.
Yeah.
And that can be terrifying for some people, even that. And so it's funny because on the other side of it, for me, it's not a coming back to identification of things outside of myself. It's just cultivating and continuing that place of I am in and amongst the world.
Yeah.
So it's almost like cultivating that eye of the storm, where it's, you know, everybody's playing their game. Everybody is associated or attached to different things at different levels. And it's really just a pulled back, more observational approach as opposed to enmeshment approach.
Yeah.
So I'm aware that everything is going on. I'm aware of the state of the world, the state of the country, the state of the union. But none of those things are impacting me, because that's not the game I'm playing. I'm actively choosing to not play that game, because it's not something I have any control over. There are individuals in places of power that are doing their thing, and there are individuals in places of receptivity who are open to the news that they're getting about these things, which has a prism that it's being shown through, where there is, you know, truth is subjective. One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist.
Yep.
So there is no black and white. It's just shades of gray and the spectrums of color. And really, at the core of it, if we get to the level of like, what are we here for? What's the point? It's one, life is a practice. Nobody has this thing figured out. Bill Gates, you know, the titans of industry, and the most successful in any capacity, the best basketball player, whoever. Nobody has life figured out, because it's a practice. And so that's what we're here for. We're here to practice. On the heels of that, everybody's doing the best they can with the tools they've got at every second. And all of us have different tools and different size toolboxes. And if we look at it through that lens, then we kind of move away from looking at good and evil as just completely black and white, because again, it's a spectrum and it's a shade of things.
Yeah. My father, my late father-in-law, he was, when you were talking about, you know, the eye of the storm, that guy, I admired him so much. And one of the main reasons was he could talk to anybody, both sides of the spectrum, politically. I mean, you pick a topic, he could talk to anybody.
Yeah.
A, he was so well-read and very, very smart, but B, he was just there to listen to their point of view.
Yeah.
And he used to tie me into knots when we would talk at dinner. You know, it would be at the end of the dinner, he and I, and you know, he's asking me these questions and he's probing sort of my take on everything.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I mean, he would get me so frustrated because I couldn't fully figure out what I was trying to tell him. He knew more about what I was trying to tell him than I did. So just the fact that he was calmly able to be in that position, I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and like I said, he could be in a room of 500 people and just smoothly roll through everybody and just have just be there and experience it all. And you look at him, you're like, God, that guy is like Obi-Wan Kenobi, or, you know, it's just, he's just so far, he's operating on a whole different level.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. That when you said that reminded me of him.
And that's really it. It's being in the world, but being apart from it at the same time.
Yeah.
Because if there's something that we're not aligning with, or we're not vibing with, we don't have to choose to experience that. So at some degree, we're choosing everything we experience individually.
Yeah.
So if we're resistant to another's way of thinking, we're choosing to align with a belief that is outside of ourselves. We're choosing to give energy to those things.
Yeah.
And the more energy we give to things outside of ourselves, the less we have the capacity to make that stronger connection to our inner self, which is really where the knowledge comes from. And, you know, like I just said, this is all a practice. It's also a process of moving from thinking to feeling to knowing. So we start off thinking. We're really good at thinking. our systems are insane thinkers. And a lot of times 99%, 98% of the thoughts we have are from our subconscious. And so they're not even actually conscious critical thought. It's just random stuff that pops up that can either terrify us, it can enliven us, it can have any number of emotional expressions associated with it. But the more that we entertain and the more we feed those little gremlins of self-doubt or fear or anger or hatred or identifying with separation, not only are we separating ourselves more from everyone else and embedding and enmeshing ourselves with our outer world even more, we're distancing ourselves from ourselves. And that's the big thing. Once we get, for me anyway, once I got to a place of absolute, I mean, literally absolute acceptance of every expression of everything going on in the world, all the atrocities that we're capable of, everything. It's and that's the point of, like you just said, when I get there, I'll be.
Yeah.
Once I achieve this, once I get to this level, once I do this, then I'll be happy, fulfilled, complete, anything. Every time we associate with things outside of ourselves for our happiness or anything else, we're missing the ball. We're missing the mark. Because if we don't have those things for ourselves first, fulfillment, happiness, contentment, nothing outside of ourselves is going to really do that. And there have been lifetimes spent pursuing external things for internal satisfaction or justification.
Yeah. Acceptance of everything. Somebody might say, well, don't you care about anything? I mean, that's what I used to say to my father-in-law. I'm like, don't you believe in anything? And I knew he did, but just the way it was coming across. And so I guess the question is, can you be both? Can you be in that? Okay.
And so here's the other challenge. And so often when we're talking about thought, emotion, and reaction especially, reaction is persistence and resistance. So what we're reactive to is something we're resisting. What we resist persists. So if we are, let's say we're a victim's rights advocate, or fighting for social equality, and we're meeting the thing we're fighting against at that thing's energetic level, all we're doing is helping to co-create more of that thing. The challenge is we have to go towards what we want, not fight what we are against. Because if we fight what we are against, that's a major expression of resistance. And the more resistance we cultivate in our world, the less we're going to be able to really connect more truly with ourselves and with anybody else in every expression.
Yeah.
So instead of, I hate this thing, we need to fix it, we need to flip the coin and say, what's on the other side of that? So let's say let's just go with rape culture. So I just hate that's even a thing. It's disgusting. It's base. It's violent. It's aggressive. It's awful. But is policy or regulation or control going to do anything? No. Is education about ourselves and awareness of who we are as individuals and collectively, is changing the way that we parent and raise our children, is taking a hard look at ourselves in the mirror and saying, well, what am I doing to contribute to this? Those are all different ways that we can fight something by going to its opposite. Because one, we can go to the root cause instead of just fighting the expression or the symptom. Two, okay, if we want to end something, what can we start that will just take all that oxygen? So it can be, greater responsibility and education for individuals and for leaders, and to really inform, like, hey, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't take advantage of anyone else. We don't abuse anyone else, because we're all sovereign beings, and that's a universal violation at that point.
Yeah.
But fighting the thing, and that's where we've been in. We've been in a loop for at least the last 2,000 years of fighting things that we are against with the same energy of the thing we are against. And we really haven't gotten anywhere. Things have gotten better. This has been, I mean, right now it is the most prolific, peaceful, abundant, and safe time that's ever existed in humanity. Yes, there are still massive portions of our human population that don't have clean water, that don't have electricity, that are still very, very subsistence-based living. But if we look at our human family from the global standpoint, every single person in the United States of America is in the top 1%.
Yeah.
And so it's just looking at things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So there's still work to be done, yes, but we are in the best time it's ever been to be alive for a human, with all of the modern things we have, with everything else. Even though, yes, there's still a spectrum of disparity and a spectrum of haves and have-nots.
Yeah.
But it's getting smaller. And the more we cultivate us now, if we can, no matter where we are, whether we're in the gutter or we're in the penthouse, if we can just say, accept, this is exactly where I am okay with that. That's a huge step, because so much of our life is spent wanting something else, wanting something to be different than what we're currently experiencing.
Yeah. When you talk about that, you know, this is kind of one of the main reasons why I originally started this whole podcast, especially when I do my little raindrops about just my opinions on things that are going on in the world. That's typically politics, but like you said, you know, and I'm going to just kind of go back into the three-dimensional world and the real world, where, you know, the United States is an amazing place, and the people that seem to be hating on the United States, I wonder if they've ever actually been outside the United States to actually see what the rest of the world lives like. And it's a pretty stark contrast, but that kind of gets away from, you know, what you're talking about. That's more all those layers of shit on our personal beings. But I mean, it's, I don't know. It's fascinating, because if more people started doing this and started focusing inward, I think the world would be a hell of a lot better place.
Well, and a lot of the I mean, you know, you look at there's I can't remember his name. I think he was from Chicago. There's a black gentleman who has gone around befriending members of the KKK, and that's been his. I think
that was a great YouTube video of that.
Yeah,
amazing.
So he's been doing that for years, and it really is, you know. And so the only two natural fears that humans have are falling and loud noises. Everything else we've manufactured and created, and again, it's this macro micro. So let's look at it. Let's pull back to the macro. Where we are and what we've experienced in the lineage of recorded history has all been contrast to help us know more about ourselves. So we started off, everything is projecting out, and all of the atrocities have actually helped us become closer together. So if we collapse and accelerate things, slavery, oh man, that is awful. It's awful to ever subjugate another human being in a way that there isn't equal energy exchange. Right. So if we're paying for something with money, that's an exchange of energy. If we're doing physical work, or it's like, let's raise a barn or build a house, that's physical, that's energy exchange. There is an energy exchange with expressions of slavery, but it's not equal. So one, yes, slavery is awful. On the other side of acceptance, the modern world would not be what it is without slavery. And every population has been a slave at one time or another in human history. That's not bypassing anything that's going on right now. But then let's look at the micro with the United States. Let's look at a statement like, the United States is the greatest country on the face of the earth that ever has been. Well, it's subjective. You know, if we look at it, what are we judging that on? You know, square footage. I'd say Genghis Khan. He almost conquered the entirety of Asia and Europe.
Yeah.
You know, let's look at yes, has the United States done great things? Yes. Have we also done awful and horrible things? Yes. That's part of radical acceptance. And
Yeah.
only when we can look at every facet of the prism or every side of the coin do we come to this place of acceptance of, yeah, okay, it is great. And it's also awful.
Yeah.
And I am great. And I can be not great as well. But it's accepting those things and realizing that every single one of us is complete and whole. And every other person, is, including ourselves, is doing the best they can at every moment, because we all have different tool sets. We've all got different awarenesses and different expressions. And the guy cutting you off in traffic, you're not even in his video. You're not even in his movie.
Yeah.
And even if it is something about us, it's not about us. It's a reflection of them.
Well, all right. So this just kind of popped up into my head here. So let's take a historical figure like an Adolf Hitler, who most likely was insane on top of everything else. I mean, in terms of his energy, is there any hope for an individual like that? Could there ever been any hope for somebody that was that far off the reservation?
What do you mean by hope?
That he would not become what he did?
Well, again, everything's subjective.
Yeah.
And so if we look at his upbringing and his background, he was born into, I think, a mercantile or merchant family, upper middle class, fairly wealthy. He was an artist. He was a free spirit, and he went to art school. And then World War II happened, and all of the atrocities and mustard gas and trench warfare.
Yeah.
He went through.
World
World War I. He went through all of that. And then we look at what happened after World War I. The Weimar Republic took the fall for everything. Huge sanctions, to the extent where people are papering their walls with paper money, with Deutschmarks, because even if it was Deutschmarks at the time, because of the devaluation. They're taking wheelbarrowfuls of money to the shops to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
So action reaction, and the pendulum swings. And so it's not if we stop just at looking at the actions of a man or a person within a microcosm, any number of things can be painted. But again, if we pull back and see the whole picture, it's like it was almost an inevitability that something like this could or would happen because of everything. I mean, the country of Germany was decimated after World War II.
Yeah.
And what happens after that? Well, then we start getting nationalists. We start getting, well, we're the only ones that can take care of ourselves. Nobody else is going to help us. So we need, and the best defense is sometimes an offense. And so, it's kind of flipping that phrase. So everything is reactive.
Yeah.
But then you get to a place of, oh crap, I've got power. Oh, okay. And there's this momentum and this energy and these thoughts that turn into beliefs that start to mobilize an entire population. And we're getting back into the quantum. Thoughts and beliefs are some of the most powerful things on the face of the earth. Yeah. And when enough people start thinking or feeling or emoting a similar way, it can cause massive regional and global conflict.
Yeah.
He was terribly ill. Yeah. He and a lot of actually the German army and the SS, they were all on drugs. They were all on, on opium the entire time.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing that not many people know about.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm forgetting his name, but he was basically a morphine addict.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, and look at JFK.
Yeah.
JFK was the same way. He was, he terrible back pain and injuries from his time. I think, would he have been, I think, World War II.
Yep, in the Navy in World War II, exactly.
And he had special doctors that were giving him, I can't remember what the medications were, but like heavy doses of pain meds and also like antipsychotics and stuff.
No, I mean, just that, on a kind of quick tangent, just that alone, when you think about those people that were making world-altering decisions,
right,
crazy.
Or even World War III, where the message came through to the Russian sub-commander.
Yeah,
and he wasn't sure, and so he didn't take the act. He disobeyed a command.
Yeah,
and it ended up being a faulty command.
Yeah,
So it's these big and little things that, it's like,
It almost seems random that
yes.
it just, it's almost seems like you're in a river and you either jump in or you don't. And
The only two constants in our life that we can ever rely on is our breath and change. Those are the only two constants.
yeah,
Our bodies regenerate every 72 hours to 12 years. Our stomach lining is renewed every 2 to 3 days. Our bones are completely replaced and renewed about every 12 years.
dude, you're freaking me out.
So we're literally not the same people
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah. That's mind blowing. But our essence,
There you go.
soul, whatever you want to call it, is the one thing that stays kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And it can feel like it can feel like that essence or that energy is getting, where are you on language on your podcast?
This is not for children, so
All right.
have at it.
So our energetic core can get the shit beat out of it, at least how it feels. We're getting battered and beaten and jacked up and messed up. But it's again, nothing is touching our energetic core. We are whole, we are complete, we have everything we need on the inside.
Yeah. It's
this conditioning layers and these external identifiers that keep us separate from ourselves and keep us separate from others.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And then I definitely want to get into this because this little bullet point that we were talking about in pre-production is one I definitely want to touch on. But it's that whole concept of, if you're a bully, when all is said and done, after they've got punched in the nose, you realize that he was just a scared little kid that was trying to project something that he wasn't until somebody exposed that.
Only those that are bullied will bullied.
Yeah.
Will bully, I should say.
Yeah.
And again, nothing's created in a vacuum. So who knows what this bully has to deal with? Let's look at the Breakfast Club, John Bender.
Yeah.
It's like, what does he have to deal with every day? And then you hear his story, and it's like, oh, okay, I could see how you ended up like that.
Yeah.
You're completely reactive. You're backed into a corner. You got your claws out at every step.
Yeah.
Because there's a lack of stability. There's a lack of what we would expect being born as energetic beings. A lot of us come in and it's a small world after all. And then we cop a punch from an alcoholic father, or other side of the coin. There's a lack of attention.
Yeah.
This is one of the things in psychology that always tripped me out as far as positive and negative reinforcement. It's not necessarily that one is good and one is bad. Positive reinforcement is an addition of something. Negative reinforcement is a removal of something. So that can be an addition of physical abuse or mental or emotional abuse. It can be a removal of love or keeping a child at an arm's distance. And so but none of these things are us. And this is where it's the biggest misconception in the world, is that we think we are the things that happen to us, and we think we are the circumstances in which we exist.
And why is that?
Because one, we're really good at adapting, and we're really good at learning our environment. And so the challenge is, if you look at a baby and smile at a baby, all I see is just pure love, pure light, pure energy.
Yeah.
And then let's say they get forgotten in a car. Or one thing that happened to me when I was real little, and I just remembered this, my mom and I were at, I think, Mission Valley Mall, where in San Diego, there's a mall where it's open air, it's outdoor. And I got stuck at, Googling at some toys in a window, and my mom had walked away, and I lost her. And I walked around looking, and I kind of went in her direction, and I went up an escalator, and then I went into a department store, and I went up another elevator in the department store or escalator, and just looking around, I'm kind of looking, not paying attention where I'm going. I bump into this man in front of me, and I look up, and it happened to be my dad.
Oh, no way.
They just happen to be, out doing different shopping, and then happen to be, at the same place. And, wow. But even that, again, one of the most benign stories ever, it's like nothing really happened. But if that fear of losing my mom in the moment, or that fear of unknown, like where did she go? What's going on? What's happening? If that gets embedded, or if that is resonant enough to then show up or be served up by my subconscious in a later experience, I'm going to experience that as PTSD. Even though in the experience, it was something that we've laughed about for years, and it was a very innocuous thing.
Right.
But our systems, so our conscious mind versus subconscious is kind of like a calculator versus a supercomputer. So going back to the intention or positive affirmation or laws of attraction, yes, and like yes, those things do exist, and what we create and what we express out into the world we'll receive back. So in that regard, those are very valid, but not in isolation, not in a vacuum. There has to be other things involved in order to really strengthen those directions that we want to go in our outer world.
All right, so here we go. This is the bullet point you sent me earlier. The truth about religion is a systematic expression of our collective dis-ease.
All right. So we touched on it a little bit. And again, I do firmly believe that we're all doing the best we can at every juncture. So often, though, the best we can is based on things outside of ourselves. So religion is a great example. And there have been messengers of the word throughout time. Buddha, Jehovah, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama. Let's go as far as Gandhi. Let's go and include Martin Luther King in there, because everybody is in some capacity talking about the same thing.
Right.
The challenge is that I'll just say, like, let's call it the word of truth, which is leading with love, leading with compassion, having empathy, being accepting that other people are not where we're at, being empathetic with everyone, and really not casting judgment, because that's doing is diminishing ourselves and others with that energy. So outside of all that, we've got these blanket statements and these blanket kind of guiding principles that every major religion has in different words and different language, but the energy of it is universal in my mind. We've got these ideas of how to be better, how to do better, how to live a different way. But then we start seeing different interpretations or different expressions of that. And we have to make a judgment call. Well, shoot, they're saying something kind of similar. Am I right or are they right?
Yeah.
And instead of having this kind of heads up ball game point of view of, well, we're kind of saying the same thing, so why can't we both be right? We have dug in, because we've got these biological black and white components to us, going back to that lion example of I'm either hungry or I'm not. I'm sleeping or I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm in danger or I'm not. We've blown past that by extracting ourselves from the natural world, and then we've created things to fill that gap or fill that void. And those things are separation and perceptions of needed strength and power. So humans by nature, because we're self-identifying with things outside of ourselves, are prone to folly. We're prone to making judgment and making snap reactions. And so some of those are, well, no, everybody else is wrong. We're right.
Right.
And in order to strengthen that right, we need to get other people thinking and believing like we do. And in order to, and now not only are we right, we've got power. Well, we want more power because we are right. And so it's this even just feeling I'm right is a separation.
Yeah.
I might be, I'm right for me, but what's right for me might not be right for somebody else. And so we've taken these words of truth and these universal guiding principles, but they've been indoctrinated and morphed and adulterated within our three-dimensional world. So these are things that are outside of the world, because we have this ability or capacity for higher consciousness, for expanding our internal space and really having thoughts to the capacity of, I wonder what thought I'll have next.
Right.
Whose thought was that? These can be challenging concepts, but because these words have been adulterated for very human, very external desires, they've inherently been taken away and diluted from their original core.
Yeah.
And they've had things added to them for perpetuation. So, and it's funny, if we look at Judaism and we look at kind of guiding principles within religious doctrines about food preparation, food safety, with separating, milk and meat, and separating meat from grains and things like that. It's basic food safety, food handling. That's all part of food safety handling classes right now. At the time, it's like, oh crap, people are dying. I wonder if it could be how we're figuring out how to eat food, and there's cross contamination. Well, if God says that this is what you should do, one, it's keeping individuals safe, but it's also keeping our flock abundant. Where people aren't dying of foodborne illness.
Yeah.
So there's function within some of it as well.
But that function has turned in, after 2,000 years, has turned into part of the what we call it, religious identity.
Right. Yeah. It's the I am, and then something coming after the I am, which is the problem.
Yeah.
And it's the rose-colored glasses, and its history was written by the victors too.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ was a Middle Eastern Jewish man. He does not look like Dolph Lundgren with flowing locks and very Anglo or European features.
Yeah.
But it's been romanticized, and it's been some of it has been intentional, because if we're spreading the word of religion into different populations, it can help to have something or some symbol that looks similar to that population in order to make it more easily to onboard.
Yeah. Or the Christmas tree, the evergreen, that it never dies, like the sun. It stops and then it goes back up again.
Exactly. And in Easter with the egg and rebirth and the cycles of life. And so, again, going back to nothing is created in a vacuum, and all of these words have been manipulated for individual or group benefit, as opposed to just being there.
Right.
And we've really taken the power and the strength and the capability out of our hands with messages like, well, the only way to know God is through the church, or the only way to worship is in this particular building.
Yeah.
And that's where we get back to the belief. And once we associate and identify with belief, we're inherently disassociating with ourselves and reducing the belief in ourselves.
Yeah.
And the challenge, going back to the challenge is, once we're born and once we have that first, exposure to the world and things that are outside of this pure appreciation for everything and love, we get zapped with the Men in Black forgetter ray. And we start to forget who we are out of survival.
The Matrix. It
is. We have to survive in this outer world.
Yeah.
And so our inner space is diminished, because we by necessity, we are identifying with things outside of ourselves, because we think those are the things that are going to keep us safe. Well, if I identify with this group, or if I do what my mother says, or if I obey my father, that's going to keep me safe. It's going to keep me right. It's going to keep me justified in my actions, because if my actions are supported by someone I respect, then that's justified.
Yeah.
But we've used that for subjugation and decimation of populations time immemorial, as far as taking action against somebody or some group that's perceived as different or other. And that's where we get into the giving over of our energy. Nobody can ever take energy from an individual. It can only be given willingly. I think we touched on it last time with the two different expressions of an experience in World War II at the concentration camps, where there was scrawled on the inside of a bunkhouse, "God will have to beg my forgiveness for what he has allowed to have happen here." And then in the exact same camp, I think it was actually both in Auschwitz, there's another survivor who said, "There is nothing any of these people could have ever done to take anything from me.
Yeah.
I am whole and complete, and that can never be taken away."
Yeah.
And so everyone has the capacity for either. We all have the capacity for for being decimated by our experiences or by our current situation, or we can cultivate that eye of the storm, or that inner island, to the point that we are, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because if I am in any situation, then I am in every situation. And I have the capacity to navigate and direct myself any way I want to go, because it's this inner guidance, it's this inner knowing, and it's this inner strength that again, every single one of us has. But so many of us lose that connection because we're associating with so many things outside of ourselves, and we're also identifying with all of that subconscious junk.
So every one of us has it. And going back to the lion analogy, every lion that's born has it as well. But inevitably, there are the lions that get to the top of the pyramid because they're just naturally better.
Yeah.
And so that, in my mind, that how that manifests itself in the human version is those are people that are the go-getters versus the more hesitant or afraid to kind of go out and make it happen. But we're all born with the same tools. It's just, how does our natural makeup dictate where we're going to go with those tools?
So
Is that right? And can
I
that be,
love that.
can those be changed in a human?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, and again, how much of those expressions are natural and from the inside out?
Yeah.
Or how many of those expressions are because of something outside of ourselves?
Yeah.
So let's take it looking at it from the biological component.
Yeah.
I am pretty sure I'll never be able to run a sub 10-second 100-meter dash. I just am not made for that.
Yeah.
My physical stock, my genealogy, I could dig in the fields for potatoes all day long, coming from, the majority of my lineage is from Western Ireland.
Yeah.
I've got great stamina. I can walk or run. I can kind of just, keep a pace and plod along, but I'm not going to ever be the fastest. So biological differences are one. And there's a spectrum of biological expressions. So the other thing is, I think I firmly, and I want to stay away from believe, but I have a sense that every single one of us has our own hyper individual spark. We all have a natural talent we're born with. And this can express itself in athletics. It can express itself in engineering, science, philosophy, caring for others, writing. We all have a natural proclivity, something that resonates with us, and we've got it from the get-go.
Right.
For me, one of mine was problem solving, and being able to see a process and either, yep, okay, I get it, or distill it down and consolidate it, or make it easier to understand. And this started when I was really young, and I would look at instructions on how to, let's say, put together IKEA furniture. And I'd take it once over, I'd glance at it, I'd look at the pieces, and then I'd be off to the races, and I could just do it. And then I employed that during my career in design, where we're taking complex business requirements or usability requirements, and we're translating them into easy to use digital products. And then that's really what I did with the book too, is just distill down all these different components that are all part of the picture. They're all facets of the whole, and really just distill it down into a linear, digestible, approachable handbook.
Yeah.
So that's mine. My talent, my innate talent was problem solving. My interest, which was sparked early on by things that happened in my world, was design and was art. And so I just had this thing ever since 7th grade. I knew I wanted to be a designer. I knew I wanted to be in graphic design. That was my passion. That was what fueled me. And so I think the equation is, one, identifying that natural talent. And so many of us have that wrung out of us from a very early age. Yeah. Whether it's, we're a family of doctors, so you're going to be a doctor.
Right.
We're a military family, you're going to be in the military, whatever it is. So a lot of times that innate talent, we aren't given the capacity or the space to really explore or express that. So phase one would be taking that inner dive and reconnecting with what that inner talent is, or reconnecting with what that spark that really just fuels us and fulfills us is. And the next thing is cultivating interest. What are we interested in? What do we like to do? What fulfills us? What makes us happy and joyful to get up in the morning? So if we marry talent with interest, that to me is the equation for a fulfilling or a fulfilled life. But it's hyper individual, and not every single one of us is going to be that alpha male on the savannah. Yeah. Some of us are going to be that, the beta who's kind of he's going off and doing his own thing. Yeah. Some of us jump at the first chance we get to volunteer for something, whether it's a sports team or to help in some capacity. And some of us hold back. I think a lot of that is conditioning. I think a lot of that is how we're treated. And every single one of us has such a hyper individual, almost unreplicable expression in this life. Even siblings, even twins are going to have completely individual and separate experiences. Right. Because nobody can ever really truly know, unless we get there technologically, everything that's going on inside somebody else. I think that would be an amazing connection tool if it ever does exist, because we could shortcut this whole thing. If we start, it's like, oh, we're so similar. Yeah. In so many ways. Yeah. But we're focusing on the minutia of differences, and things like skin color or hair color or personality type, or what I'm interested in versus what you're interested in. Yeah. And all these things are, everything we've experienced and everything we create is a beautiful expression of our exploration of our world, until we get to the point of feeling like these things are controlling us, or feeling like we are subjective to them. So we can exist in this country because this is just the random, talking about the randomness. On the one hand, it could be a complete roll of the dice that we are who we are in this time and space. Right. On the other hand, there's a concept of we actually choose absolutely everything. We choose to come into the life that we've chosen. We choose the family that we've chosen, because we're all here to have experiences of contrast and release resistance to that contrast. But we're self-identifying with things outside of ourselves, which makes us hold on to the contrast tighter, because we feel like that's the thing who we are. Yeah. Which just distances ourselves from everybody. It's amazing, because I often think about this, what if my grandfather never emigrated over to America? What if, and it actually really makes you think, just how special where you are right now. Yeah. And how random may not be the right word, but just how it got to this point is just how special. How special. It really is. So now circling all the way back around to quantum field theory, and let's take it one step further to unified field theory. If we're looking at it, looking at our existence through the lens of unified field theory, everything that ever has, is, or will happen, including all the different dimensions of possibility of this present moment, which are coexisting in this time, are all happening right now. And now, and now, and now, and now, and now. It's a perpetual thing. So the fact that we are in this dimension of experience, and we are who we are, every one of us, including everybody listening, anybody who ever hears this, there will never be another you, ever. Because there are infinite expressions of our experience and our existence that are all taking place right now in different dimensions of now, as well as different dimensions of the past and the future. It's all happening right now. So the fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that we're able to take these journeys internally, and the fact that we are who we are, that it will never happen ever again outside of the lifetime that we're experiencing right now. So why would we ever wait for something after this life? Yeah. Why would we ever be doing anything with a perception of, oh, well, if I'm good now, that'll pay off later, as opposed to, why not just do good now, because that's our natural state. Yeah. And what we create here is our reality. So if it's a fear of hell, and we're identifying with all the negative and all the perceptively evil aspects of the world, then we are experiencing hell on earth. Yeah. if we're associating
That's a great point.
with the positive and with the
Yeah.
uplifting and with the benevolent and with the empathetic, we have the capacity to experience heaven on earth. We've separated out too much.
Yeah.
We've split too much away from this experience, and we've really not given ourselves enough credit for the powerful creators that each and every one of us is.
Yeah. Damn, that's I love it. All right. So give me the myths of self-improvement, because
Ooh,
I probably
okay.
personify several of them. And I will say this, I used to personify them because I've
There you go.
definitely opened up to more, because I've seen it. I know that it works, and it's worked for me personally.
Yeah.
But what are, according to you and in your book, The Radical Enlightenment, what are the 5 myths that you see?
All right. So the first big one is that we're here to learn lessons. We're here to learn lessons. We have karmic debt. You know, if we're here and we haven't learned something, and so we're here to learn things. We're not here to learn anything. We already know everything. We've forgotten because we are separate from ourselves. Every single one of us has the most powerful intuition ever. And so often we have the self-doubt where we don't listen to those gut feelings, or we diminish our capacity because we feel like the answers are somewhere outside of us. Because how could I know?
Right.
I'm just whoever. Who am I? Which is actually a great question. It's like, who am I?
Yeah.
That's a gut check moment. That's a big challenging question. I think every single person should ask, and keep asking it until you get past all of the labels. Keep asking it until you get past all of those external things. And then you get to some rarefied air. Then you get to a really expansive internal place that can be scary. It can be intimidating. But then it's time to look at, okay, if I'm fearful or I'm angry, what's behind those things? What's underneath the fear? It's not a lesson to learn. It's an experience of contrast to have. So we're here to have experiences of contrast and release resistance to that contrast. We don't need to learn any lessons other than maybe like how to change a tire, how to save money, how to invest, things of the world we can learn. But lessons about ourselves, the information's there. And there will be helpers along the way, helpers in the form of people with different perspectives, helpers in the form of books and texts that have been passed down time immemorial since, Lao Tzu and Marcus Aurelius and everything from antiquity, even things from Sanskrit are the messages have been there forever. So the first one would be that we're here to learn lessons. That's a big fallacy. One of the second ones is that like a self-improvement or self-awareness pursuit is a selfish thing. And I understand how that can be perceived, especially if it's like, oh, well, I'm a parent and I have to take care of kids, or I'm an employee and I need to show up for work, or I'm an employer and I need to take care of my employees. But really, self-improvement is the most selfless act any of us can take, because the only way to heal our world is to first heal ourselves. And again, we get into semantics, but language is important. And that would be another one, that we are here that we have to heal. There's nothing to heal. We are complete, we are whole, we are sovereign, energetic beings having a human experience. What needs to happen is the reduction of the conditioning and the removal of the programming that's been embedded in our system that's acting counter to our natural state.
Yeah. So
there's nothing to heal. There's just energy that no longer serves us to remove. That can be a challenging one too.
Excuse me.
No worries. Another one is the only way to do it is if I meditate. I need a meditation practice to go on this consciousness journey. You don't have to. You can. Some of my favorite meditations are running, cooking, doing dishes, manual labor. Oh my God, that's like the best meditation you can ever do. If you're in a state of dis-ease or you're out of sorts, go dig a hole. Honestly, like you get into it, like dig that hole. You're burning out all of this energy that's going otherwise to these, self-doubt, negative, depressive, anxious thoughts. And so another aspect of it is our modern world is very conducive to these programs of safety and not very conducive to an expansive journey, because we are in our systems inherently look for stasis, and our systems inherently look for ease. And so we're going to take every shortcut we possibly can, right, from a biological standpoint, because we're still have the animal side. We still have conservation of energy, yeah, because our body's like, oh, I don't know when I'm going to eat again, so I'm going to store this fat, or yeah, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep this vessel safe. So then let's see, I think that's 3 or 4. There's more, but yeah, let's do like one more.
Perfect.
The answers I'm looking for, I don't have the answers, yeah, or I need to look to somebody else for an answer. I need to find a guru. Every single one of us is the guru. Every single one of us is our best teacher and our best student. And this is where you get back. Yeah, look outside of ourselves. I mean, I've been on a pursuit of information and asking yes and my entire life, and there's so much out there outside of what we're given in a formal education setting. And so I'd like, let's get curious. Let's explore. Let's explore ourselves. Let's explore our concepts of right and wrong, because a lot of times that's defined by the victor. And if we look at it from a lot of standpoints, we are the big villains in the world right now. If we look at it from other standpoints, we're still that shining beacon on the hill. Yeah. But since our democratic republic was established, there are a lot of other places in the world that have taken that torch and run with it and implemented it in different ways and new and novel ways that we didn't have the foresight or insight to have in 1776. And so, keeping everything living and looking at it from the standpoint of everything that exists in our world outside of the natural world, we have created to help make better sense or to help understand our place in it.
Yeah.
To the extent that we've given perceptively a lot of our strength and power over to it. And it's like, well, what can I do? I'm only one person. Well, what can I do? Yeah. Somebody else is in control of that. We have complete control of everything within our systems. Yeah. We have explicit responsibility within this body that we have. And so many of us give it away to the extent where, one, we're identifying with things outside of ourselves, or misidentifying that we are something that we're experiencing, like depression, like anxiety, like abandonment, like scarcity, whatever it is. But we clear all that away, and we are the greatest knower in our life. And so, yes, there will be helpers along the way. Yes, be interested and look at all the information. But at the end of the day, that inner knowing, that intuition, that is the guru, that is the light, that is the energy, that is the you, who can then express that out into the world once we reconnect with it. But until we do, it's challenging, because we keep all this other stuff in play and feeling like it's controlling us.
Yeah, and learning to listen to that inner guru and listen to that intuition and all those things seems to be what you're kind of what you're all about.
Yeah, and it's a process and it's a practice. And I guess that's the other challenging side. There's no silver bullet. It's not one and done. There's no pill that we can take to magically make it happen.
Right.
I've been open and curious my entire life, but my accelerated journey was really about 4 years, from when I first started getting to the subconscious and the emotion shift work and changing, actually physically changing the energies. And in my perception, changing my physical body as well, along the way. That was the accelerator, was really cleaning that subconscious junk out.
Yeah.
In doing so, becoming more aware of the thoughts, reactions, and emotions that I was having. And I'm not those things. I'm part of the system that's experiencing those things, but I have purview and I have perspective of it. So in that regard, I have some extent of control of it. I still get dropped into reactive experiences all the time, but I'm much more aware of when I do. And so instead of it taking, like a disagreement between my wife and I, or if I get dropped into it and I'm reactive and prickly towards her, because she's been doing her work as well, she sees it and she says, you need to handle your business because something's going on, something's off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So instead of these expressions of dis-ease lasting days or weeks or months, either internally with just, the self-flagellation, I'm not good enough, or interpersonally between a partner, you just got into it and the animosity is still there. It's shortened from weeks down to like minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's gotten much, much more close to that lion experience.
Yeah.
Of, well, that was something that happened. Okay, that's not me.
Yeah. And that's actually an awesome way to finish it. And one of the things that I've learned, just like I said earlier, when just talking to this particular person, is just being able to identify it and understand what's going on is a massive step that I never could have taken by myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's, and that's the wonderful side about all of the quantum entanglement and the laws of attraction aspect of things. Once we take our first step on this journey of self-inquiry or self-awareness or questioning, who am I? Our helpers will appear in the forms of media, in the forms of books that come into our field, in the forms of people that come into our experiences. And those are going to change. Again, change is the only constant. And so as our energy changes, who we resonate will change. Who we resonate with will change.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those will be expressed in strengthening of friendships. Sometimes those will be expressed in distancing between family members, because sometimes family members, the ones that are closest to us, if we start changing, are often going to be the ones most resistant to that change.
Right.
Because we're not fulfilling an expectation or a construct that they had of us.
Right.
But as soon as we make that choice, the helpers appear, because that's the path. That's the why. The why of this whole thing is to figure ourselves out, if we want to. Otherwise, that's not your why, and that's perfectly fine too, because we're all on these individual journeys together. And the more each of us takes steps more into ourselves and gains that insight and gains that perspective, and again, it's incremental. Like, we get one and it's mind-blowing and it's expansive. In Zen Buddhism, they call those Satori experiences. It's the enlightenments along the way. And that's really what this whole thing is. It's this journey of micro enlightenments that add up. It's the gestalt. The sum of the whole is greater than the individual parts.
Yeah.
And it's accumulative, and it's expansive. And as soon, like you said, as soon as you get that first step, as soon as you hear that first little thing to really get that expansion going, then it's like, ooh, okay, what else is there out there?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, my friend. Good stuff.
I don't even know what happened. That was a whirlwind. That was amazing.
It was awesome, man. It was, and I definitely will have to have you on again, talk more about this, because
sounds good.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. And I highly recommend anybody out there, if you're interested at all, it's radicalenlightenment.com. Kevin Russell. The book is Radical Enlightenment, My Guy on the Ninth Floor. Kevin, thank you very much.
Ryan, I can't thank you enough. It was great talking. I always love exploring, and these are the enlightening and the enlivening conversations that light me up. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
One more step in the journey.
There you go. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Hey, listen, I'll finish off with this. If you're in the police, the military, the fire departments, or the first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much. Stay safe. Kevin Russell, thanks for your time.
Brian Lukasik, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, it's the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, Observations on the World We Live In. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.